Fundamentals of Educational Communication Technology. Anyways, good morning. We are the Team Quad Squad, and for today we are going to present an Edcomtech learning plan analysis. A government project or program that we choose in the sector of education is the Indigenous Peoples Education Program, or the IP-Ed. To give you an overview, the Indigenous Peoples Education IP program is the Education Department's response to Indigenous peoples' IP's right to a basic education that is contextually appropriate, respects their identities, and promotes Indigenous knowledge, skills, and other aspects of their cultural heritage. The IP program is an educational response for the Indigenous peoples where it supports their education initiatives through the formal, non-formal, and informal modalities that will help them to respect their identities, cultures, and their Indigenous knowledge. However, there are problems or conflicts with the IP program. These are the following. First, IP-ED is not yet fully established, and teachers are meeting challenges in implementing this curriculum, such as a lack of resources and awareness of Indigenous knowledge systems and practices. Second, the approach of COVID-19 pandemic affects the educational learning system in the Philippines. All students were affected in this change. Thus, another thing is that IP program is still in process because of the teachers who's meeting challenges just to implement the curriculum that the IPs needed. They still lack in resources, and also the teachers themselves are not aware about the knowledge of the Indigenous peoples. It's like they still needed time to study about it for this program to be fully established. Also, upon establishing this program, the COVID-19 pandemic took place all over the world. That's why it became more difficult for the government or the department to fully establish this program. Third, Indigenous peoples have fewer accesses to and less high-quality education than other populations. Fourth, curriculum and teaching approaches that reflect their communities' histories, culture, practices, local languages, and traditional knowledge are frequently absent from their education. And fifth, because of their limited vocabulary in English, Indigenous students are significantly more likely to encounter orally delivered stories with longer sentences. Thus, the Indigenous peoples are lacking in the quality of the education. Under this lacking is the absence of their community histories, their cultures, local languages, and even their traditional knowledge. It's like they are still deprived of learning their own culture or the knowledge and skills that they want to acquire. That's why it reflects their knowledge when it comes to English. They just learned limited vocabulary. That's why when they encounter a deep word of English, they are having a long discussion about it for them to understand the meaning of that word. Tentative answers or solutions to the problems. So, as for stating the problems that the IP program is facing, we have some solutions to suggest for this program to be fully established. The government should place greater emphasis on Indigenous peoples in order for them to learn more and have access to decent curriculum and teaching methods. The department should strive for more program support finances in order to sustain and ensure learning continuity through continual contextualization of learning resources. To enhance long-term community development by promoting responsive and pandemic-relevant Indigenous community knowledge such as Indigenous farming and health systems. First of all, the government must focus or give a greater emphasis to the Indigenous peoples for them to learn, to have a decent curriculum, and to acquire knowledge that they have to know, especially on their cultures, to make it grow more and to make it more productive. For this to be fully established, the government must support this program in terms of finances for them to acquire the materials they need that will be used as their learning materials for the whole program. And for this to make it happen, the government must provide a plan or help them through promoting their pandemic-relevant IP's community knowledge by the Indigenous farming and also in their health system. The program background information. The Philippines is a culturally diverse country with an estimated 14 to 17 million Indigenous peoples IPs belonging to 110 ethno-linguistic groups. They are mainly concentrated in northern Luzon Cordillera Administrative Region, 33%, and Mindanao 61%, with some groups in the Visayas area. According to Departmented Order Number 62, S. Adoption of the National Indigenous Peoples Education IP Policy Framework in 2011 and Departmented Order Number 43, S. the Department of Education Departmented has accepted the Indigenous Peoples Education Curriculum Framework in its 2013 Implementing Rules and Regulations of Republic Act No. 10533, otherwise known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. Do 32 S. 2015. IPED Curriculum Framework seeks to provide guidance to schools and other education programs, both public and private, as they engage with Indigenous communities in localizing, indigenizing, and enhancing the K-12 curriculum. Based on their respective educational and social contexts, the framework aims to ensure that students are educated in a way that is culturally rooted and responsive. Furthermore, IPED curriculum at the school community level actualizes the department's commitment to the attainment of the above-mentioned right of Indigenous peoples to education. In this regard, for schools and learning programs serving Indigenous learners, the aims of the K-12 program are realized through IPED methods and material through formal or non-formal educational systems. In addition, the curriculum's goal is to increase the IP's communication skills, problem-solving ability, and critical thinking abilities, as well as to foster a strong sense of community. As Education Secretary Luistro said, the curriculum was deliberately created to be culturally sensitive with the goal of assisting them in becoming functionally literate and contributors to our society. Becoming functionally literate and contributors to our society. Therefore, Indigenous communities will not be able to fully exercise their rights until they have access to quality education, and the majority of Indigenous peoples will not even receive a basic education. And, thus, Indigenous education is concerned with the transmission of Indigenous knowledge, models, methods, and material through formal or non-formal educational systems. As a result, the curriculum goal is to promote the IP's knowledge and to communicate effectively so that they can help themselves when outside their tribes and can compete with skills globally. In this section, the hypothesis is now tested. To sustain IPED in schools in school year 2021 to 2022, the department intends to have additional program support funds to ensure learning continuity through continuing contextualization of learning resources and COVID-related materials, orientation of new teachers and school heads assigned to schools in IP communities, and augmentation of learning delivery modalities. Furthermore, through rural farm schools, senior high school programs, and similar projects, Departmented intends to support long-term community development by promoting responsive and pandemic-relevant Indigenous community knowledges, such as Indigenous farming and health systems. The hypotheses of our study state that the government's help to our IP communities can help them to the improvement of their education, skills, attitudes, critical thinking and culture that can provide them the equality that they want in our society. Therefore, by the help of providing them a good quality of education will be one of the key to let them feel that we are one. We are equal. What we have is what they get. Maybe in some situation they cannot easily access the government help is that they need it is because they are lack of knowledge, awareness and education about it, like the health benefits from the government and other IUDAs. So by the help of IPED, they can learn and understand the process of those situations, and at the same time, they can also share their culture and knowledge to our fellow Filipino. Conclusion. In conclusion, even though there are programs for the IP's community that are implemented from education to health, if it lacks support, resources, and awareness of Indigenous knowledge and practices, the programs that was implemented will still fail and would not continue. What they first need to do before implementing programs is first study the Indigenous knowledge and practices, know what the IP needs, and lastly, on how they can still continue the programs even with low resources. For further analysis, in this section I will present the SWOT analysis of this implemented program. Strengths. First, it will contribute to the provision of education that will enable people to assert, exercise, and safeguard their rights in conformity with their culture and tradition. Through IPED program, it will help our IPs protect their basic rights, their cultures and traditions. They will become more knowledgeable and will lessen the discrimination towards them. Second, it will help the underprivileged and undeserved population achieve their ambition of a better life by partnering with IPs. We all know that education is for all, There is no specific age limit, sexual orientation biases, status in life. If we want to learn, we will educate ourselves. Through this, more educated individuals will better result to continuous development. Third, it will raise their understanding and appreciation of intellectual property in order for them to realize their dream of a better life. Fourth, it will raise their awareness and appreciation of indigenous knowledge, systems, and practices as intellectual property. Our IPs will become aware on their intellectual property rights. They have the right to protect their intellectual property, including the right to protect that property against its inappropriate use or exploitation. Similarly, indigenous peoples are seeking to protection their traditional knowledge and practices from commercial exploitation. Fifth, this will establish the long-term processes for IP education. Education and learning are two of the most important ingredients to becoming all that you can be. How open you are to learning will help determine your path in life. Education does not just happen at school. It is not just about math and other subjects. Learning is happening all the time, whenever your mind is open. Education is not just about learning facts, but more so about learning how to think. It is learning to make good choices. It is learning to act with purpose. Becoming educated is a lifelong process. It can be hard and frustrating at times, but it can also be incredibly exciting and enriching. Thus, the Indigenous Peoples Education Program will help our IPs strengthen their education, learning, and knowledge acquisition, as well as help them become aware and more knowledgeable on their rights and prevent such discrimination that they experience. Weaknesses. First, a scarcity of culturally relevant learning materials. Second, teachers lack expertise in indigenizing lessons. Third, they lack access to high-quality education. And fifth, education systems, policies, and curriculum are rarely developed in collaboration with indigenous peoples. Therefore, IP Ed affect the most the expertise, the instructional materials, both culturally and modern subjects, as well as a well-established education system in our IPs. Next is opportunities. Indigenous education is the key to keeping Indigenous children youth grounded in their unique cultures. IP Ed program will help our IP's younger generation to still keep in touch in their unique cultures, so that these cultures will keep on existing through this next generation that will come. Moreover, the threats that IP encounters: first, education endangers the IP's existence. And second, education has the potential to discriminate against, assimilate, and destroy their culture, language, identity, and rights. Therefore, education plays a crucial role not only to us but also to our Indigenous people. Education become their threat for their existence, saying that without education in their sector will lead them to their community extinction. Aside for it, discrimination will still exist against them. In this section, we are about to give our recommendations for the better improvement of this program, as well as on how they will address the problem that their program encounter. First, the program should support funds. It is acceptable, for it will sustain and ensure the learning resources of the IPs. Funding also plays an important role in any project or program, thus having a sustainable funds will help the program grow. Second, support the long-term community development through the education initiatives. It is acceptable because it would help the IPs to learn more and to develop their education. Third, Indigenous people play a critical role in keeping Indigenous children and youth grounded in their distinct cultures. It also assists IPs in meeting the issues they confront today, especially given their schooling. Fourth, this is a critical and innovative option for preserving the wide variety of locally distinct knowledge systems that ensure resilience in these times of fast ecological and societal change. The transmission of traditional knowledge across generations is fundamental to protecting and promoting Indigenous peoples' cultures and identities, and as well as the sustainability of livelihoods, resilience to human-made and natural disasters, and sustaining culturally appropriate economic development. And fifth, IP's teachers must be knowledgeable and well-trained, so that IPs will meet the knowledge that they need without any problems such as unable to deliver the message because of language or dialect gap, and or lacks of vocabularies. Thus, meeting all the solutions on the problem encountered by the program will result to a good innovative project not only for the government but also to our indigenous people who needs our help to keep them and their cultures and traditions alive and existing for the next generation. That's all. Thank you for listening. I hope that the intended message are delivered. Note that the group members are below. Goodbye, take care, and God bless.